Oh, we're live. It's happening. Oh, we saw a glimpse of Jude for a second there. Alrighty. Hi, everybody. Holy shit. It's COVID Convo time. It's been like a really long time since I've seen you guys, even on the screen. So I'm very, very happy to see you. I even put on lipstick about it, even though I was like, with a rust color shirt, do you wear a red lip? And now I'm regretting it because there's a lot of like peachy business happening here. But anyways, that's a different show. Hi everyone. I hope that folks are doing fairly good and surviving this like third wave of our little apocalypse bestie that's been chilling with us for the past year. I feel like we probably have lots of questions, and like I have a couple of questions for sure. And like a billion things have happened out in the world in the past little bit that I feel like we probably have some opinions about, and maybe even some facts. And so maybe we'll just get started by like, how the hell is everybody, and like what's going on for folks right now? Does anyone want to get the party started?
I'll go because Marsha's eating.
Okay.
And I just swallowed my last candy that I'm going to eat for the second, and then I'm going to go back for more.
What are those candies before you introduce yourself?
They are Lindt super reduced candies that I found at the drugstore the other day. They were like 70% off because they're Easter candies.
Mm-hmm.
I love late stage capitalism. Thank you. Thank you for severe price reductions.
I mean, the like February 15th chocolate is just as delicious as the February 14th chocolate. Am I right?
Oh, come on. Yeah.
Sometimes a little tastier, actually.
I might go back and I might like buy a bunch of bags that I can freeze.
That is like a real prayer thing to do. So I feel like you have to at this point. We have no choice.
Yeah, now I have people are now I have to be I'll be accountable. Anyway, I'm Levi. I'm gonna introduce myself now. I'm the ED at Sunshine House, and I get the real pleasure and honor of hanging out with these three people, and sometimes a couple other people every couple of weeks. And it's been a long time. It's been a month, hey. So I'm really excited to hear what everyone has to say. Things are going, and things are moving, and we're coping, and we're trying our best, but here we are diving headfirst into something that looks remarkably familiar but just feels so exhausting. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. We were having a conversation yesterday at work about like how at this point in our lives, like every little thing is just like, it just feels like you just want to collapse. Like you're just like, okay, this is too much now. I can't handle this. And it's like little things that just wouldn't bother you. Like my cat meowing for me at food. I'm just like, stop. I just want to break down and cry, right? So that's where I'm at in my life. And I know that so many other people are there. So it's been challenging, but here we are. And this third winter thing isn't helping either. Like this sucks. But I'm stopping.
Thanks, Levi. Karen or Marsha wants to click on first? Karen, how about you?
Yeah, you're going to have to call us out, Margaret, because like, look at this group that you have.
Like, I have enough Zoom calls now where people do check-ins, and we spend more time like trying to figure out who's going to talk next. And I'm like, we're going to say our names and we're going down the list. That's the way it's going to happen. Anyways.
I feel like the last time I did a COVID Convo chat was just Levi, Marsha, and I, and we just stared at each other like awkwardly for about an hour. And then we were like, is it time up? Can we go off live now? that was the entirety of the COVID Convo. So feel free to call us out and be like, you got to talk now. My name's Karen. I work in human rights and do some stuff with QPOC Winnipeg and other things. And yeah, how am I doing? Good grief. Today has felt like a year. Like the news about vaccine expansion and seeing all your friends, like people you know, suddenly queuing up to get vaccinated. That was like this huge thing. verdict in the trial related to the murder of George Floyd. I just read about that. And so it feels like so much has happened just today in and of itself. But yeah, I think I'm feeling like Levi. Like every email that comes into my inbox feels like a personal and systemic attack against me. And I'm just like, why? Don't email me. Don't ask me to do anything. Everything feels awful and hard. But otherwise, yeah, I feel like, gosh, we're gearing up for another hard time. But at the same time, like maybe with some more resources and supports in our pockets, since some of us are able to access vaccine, which is an exciting thing. So a mix of emotions. I'm all over the place, clearly. I mean, I'm glad to be here.
And Levi, Karen, and I swap our wiener dogs back and forth because of the exact situation you're describing with your cat, where I'm like, why am I crying that my wiener dog wants to be fed right now? And then I'm like, oh, it's because it's time for her to go see Karen and Rudy. So you get it. Marcia, how about you? How are you? Oh my gosh. What's going on for you?
I'm the same as Karen and Levi as well. My moments where I'm doing good, trying to like think back to a year ago and some of the things I started doing to buffer through the stress and try to kind of implement some of those things again so I can make it through the day with a little more energy and a little more patience, because I do not have a lot of that right now.
No.
And yeah, same. Each email feels like a lot of weight to carry. And yeah, it's just a lot of feeling like a lot of responsibility still, and less hopeful about the ability to shift and meet the needs that go along with those responsibilities. So that's been a challenging couple of months with that. And I know our teams are getting so tired, like our rapid response teams who've been, deployed consistently for months and months on end now, even when the rest of the province was quieter than First Nation communities, like they're tired too. And so I'm really feeling that kind of collective burnout from a lot of people, but especially within the healthcare system. And I think looking to the east and what's going on there, and how those big decisions impact how we feel day to day based on whether they give us hope or whether we think they're pulling in the wrong direction. It's really challenging, I think, right now. And also, like, there's some geese who have decided to nest in our yard. So Baxter stares out the window and barks loudly and incessantly, which really interferes with my ability to chair or talk during meetings. And then also he can now reach every counter. So today's fun trick was pulling down Pepper and eating Pepper.
Oh my God. I
thought for sure that would discourage him, kind of like the bad tasting nail polish my mom used to paint on my nails. No, he just went for it.
I mean, I also kept chewing on my nails through that bad tasting stuff. So like, it is what it is. All right, fair enough. Thanks, everybody. And then I guess and I'm Maggie, and I am a nurse who works in community health doing for a bunch of different places. Mostly I'd like to talk about drugs and sex, and, have sex and do drugs all at the same time. I like to I have a nice work-life balance. But for real, I'm just, I'm feeling, I think we're all kind of feeling this just big, deep sigh of okay, here we go again. I was just in a meeting today talking about, where people are do we need to keep having our every 2 week COVID huddle to update and And I was yeah, we do, because we're right back at the start again. We're trying to figure out what's going on with all these variants, and we just need to sort of sort stuff out. My parents got their first Pfizer shot about a month ago, beginning of April, a couple weeks ago, actually. And I didn't really know like I dropped them off at this super site, which I have feelings about, no surprise, and like pulled around the corner and had a cry. Like I didn't really know that it was going to really impact me in that way, that was going to be like have a feeling of like a little bit of relief, honestly, about my folks at least having one shot on board. And even though I know we can't really do anything differently, I still like the fact that they are, you know, a little bit protected just feels really awesome. So that's been a good thing. And then I got my first Pfizer shot too the other day. I know. So now I'm like, all right, well, I have to have some surgery in May. And so I was like, all right, well, me and my like pal Pfizer are gonna go and brave St. Boniface Hospital and do our thing. So that's kind of what's on top for me these days. But yeah, I'm just missing you guys a lot, actually. Like missing that last COVID convo that we had was like, I was like, whatever, I'll catch up with them in a couple weeks. And like, we still chat and stuff, but it's really like, I freaking missed you. So I'm happy to be here. And I'm also have like 60 bajillion questions because I feel like things are flying fast and furious. I don't know. And like, if Marcia Anderson is like, there are a lot of demands on my time happening, then like, you know, that the pandemic is like turning up the heat a little. So that is, I think we'll kind of like switch over to have that conversation about like where things at. And Levi, you're just gonna eat your candies. I want a bowl of candy. I have a bowl of freaking dog treats. That's it in my candy dish. It's depressing. Anyway.
I have some Caesar salad that my sister warned me the croutons have gone bad, so to avoid eating the croutons.
Marcia, that is the most relatable dinner plan of all time. I'm like, okay, I feel better about the shit that I've been putting in my body the past couple of days.
I was just like, I need to have some food though, so I'm doing it.
Yeah, we just won't eat that part. I have scraped a lot of mold off of shit recently.
I ordered pizza and a Caesar salad last Friday. I was like, I'll order a Caesar salad because that's reasonable. The Caesar salad is still sitting in my fridge. I ate that.
Drew commented, croutons don't go bad, they just get better with age. And all I have to say is if my sister and nephews won't eat the croutons because they taste bad, I'm not giving it a shot. But as far as the topic of conversation and COVID and what's going on,
we don't want to talk about your gluten-free lifestyle anymore, Marcia. You're done.
I mean, I thought I got real deep and personal there, so I'd like to shift away.
Marcia's like, I've said too much.
Yeah. Pretend you heard nothing about the salad.
Or why I haven't eaten yet today. Okay, so today we hit over 200 cases in Manitoba for the first time since January. 211 new cases today. You know, part of the concern is, of course, the hospitalizations will lag about 10 days to 2 weeks. So we'll expect to see hospitalizations go up. Right now, in total, 132 people in the hospital, 66 were in their infectious period, 33 in the ICU, 18 in the infectious period, and the test positivity rate in the province is at 6%. Now, the number of variants of concern also increasing pretty rapidly. And so we're expecting to see a shift so that the variants of concern will actually make up the majority of cases. And that's the direction that we're heading in. So as of today, 774 total cases due to variants of concern. Vast majority are due to the B117 variant, which is sometimes or was initially called the UK variant. And now cases due to VOCs are in every region. So some of the good news as we bridge to talking about vaccines, I would say, is there's actually really good evidence that all of the vaccines that we're using currently work well against the B117 variant too. And so since the variants, including B117, spread more easily and cause more severe illness at younger ages, now is the time, you know, as soon as you're eligible to book that appointment when you can and get vaccinated and have that confidence that it is actually going to offer a lot of protection against the strains that we're more commonly seeing now in Manitoba.
Mm-hmm. Well, and like maybe we should just jump right into having that like vaccine conversation, you know, and I think maybe even just like if there's a way that we can just like kind of settle people's anxieties about that AstraZeneca vaccine and like have a quick conversation about that. Just to get, and maybe we should have it a few times throughout this hour that we have to like help people understand why we would like for sure be recommending that people get their like whatever the first vaccine available is. Do you want to jump in on that, Marcia? Or
Yeah, for sure. So, of course, what we're talking about is the very rare but serious side effect of blood clots that have been seen after AstraZeneca vaccination in Europe and in Canada, and then also I think it was last week reported with Johnson and Johnson in the United States, several cases. And so let me talk about that first, and then we'll talk about how low the risk is and also why that risk hasn't been seen with Pfizer and Moderna yet. Okay. And so I'm going to like count on you guys to jump in and let me know if I'm going on too long, or also if I'm not doing a good job explaining for our audience. So AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson are both viral vector vaccines. So there's a small amount of the COVID-19 virus put into an inactivated form of a common cold virus. Okay, so they're more similar to each other than they are to either Moderna or Pfizer. So we'll just say that right offhand. Now, Europe initially reported the blood clots. The thing that they're concerned about is what's called vaccine-induced thrombotic thrombocytopenia. So thrombotic means pro-forming blood clots, so increasing the risk of forming blood clots. Thrombocytopenia means low platelets. Platelets are one of the cells in the blood that actually help form blood clots, okay? And in the kind of regular blood clots that we might get if we're in hospital for surgery or on a long plane trip, our platelet counts don't go down. What happens in this condition is you actually get this immune-based reaction that both drops the platelets and makes clots more likely to form. Okay, and then
that's like a weird
it can
paradox.
be clots in the. It is, and so the treatment is different too, because heparin, which is a blood thinner we usually use, doesn't work as well because it's like the heparin-induced thrombocytopenia we can see, which is a rare side effect. Okay, but I'm getting off track. So the blood clots can happen in the leg, they can travel into the lungs, and then there's a rare complication where they actually can travel into part of the brain, one of the blood vessels in the brain. This causes severe headaches. And there's been a very, very small number of cases, but it's very serious. And even though the number of cases is very small, of those cases, the percentage of people who have died is pretty high. So it's a very serious but very rare complication. And so the latest evidence that I saw suggested that the rate of this complication with AstraZeneca or with Johnson & Johnson is somewhere between about 1 in 250,000 to 1 in a million. So it's much, much lower than 0.001%. It is exceedingly rare. So people have been comparing. It's much like magnitudes of order less risky than the risk of blood clots if you take birth control pills, if you take birth control pills and smoke, if you take an extended plane trip, or if you get admitted to hospital for surgery and are not moving around. So it's much, much less risky than that. And what I think is really important is this is a real side effect. Like I said, very, very rare. Right now, the risk of getting COVID is still much, much higher. And the risk of getting COVID and then having to be hospitalized, also much, much higher. Okay. And so we do need people to be aware of these rare and serious side effects. That's an important part of informed consent. But we also have to make sure people have the information about what that level of risk is compared to what the benefit is in terms of reducing the much higher risks of getting COVID and ending up in hospital with a severe outcome related to that.
Totally. Well, and I've been talking to lots of people recently who are like, I have this feeling that I should like I'm nervous and I'm scared and it has been a real feelings aren't facts moment in time here in the Mara Bryant's household where I'm like the ways that we have been talking about this side effect, of course we're nervous. Even like I feel nervous and have to really like think about it and be like we're those feelings are being manufactured and created, but they are not telling us a true story. And so, I think that for me is like a really like has been a really important way of kind of thinking about it is like that what that feeling like so yeah like maybe you feel a bit nervous, maybe you aren't sure, and also book the damn thing and get the thing done. Like this is the theme of my week because I also don't want to have surgery where they zap my heart a little bit. I'm not super jazzed about that, but I'm also like your feelings aren't facts, Margaret Bryans, and Marsha, who is a literal cardiologist, is like, get the damn ablation. So, like it's that kind of a situation with the vaccines as well. So I just I appreciate the like kind of getting to hear what the story is there a little bit. Levi or Karen, did you want to hop in? I think there's a question from Jenny if you're.
Yeah, actually, I put a question in the private chat. I don't know if Marsha wants to address that or not. It's not my own question, it's just a thing. But the other thing that, going back to what you were talking about, I was reading a thing today about how the pandemic itself has really, and what you're describing has really altered the way that we're able to do risk assessments in a critical kind of way. So I think that anyone who's kind of feeling like that, just know that that's a natural kind of response, and we're all struggling with trying to understand like what are the risks and what are the benefits, and the pandemic has really shifted the way that we're able to assess risks. Like I think in that article, I think it was in the Globe and Mail, and they were talking about how like Denmark just threw out or just stopped administering all of the AstraZeneca things because of these perceived risks, when the risks weren't actually that. When the risks that Marsha was describing are much, much higher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for that, Levi. And, I do get people reaching out to me directly asking questions about vaccines. And, one of the common statements that comes out is there are so many opinions out there, I don't know which one to believe. And it's kind of like the feelings aren't fact. And it's like, well, let's keep in mind we need to look at the source of the opinion and check it against facts, because opinions are not facts. And not all opinions are equally valid. And in something as important as this, we want to have in accessible ways the most up-to-date information for people to be making those choices from. And I do appreciate this comment Levi put in the chat about an article that argued the risk for blood clots as a symptom of COVID is higher than the side effect of the induced blood clots from the vaccine. Also true. That's actually one of the major complications of COVID, that when people are hospitalized, they experience. There's a immune system response that also makes people more likely to get blood clots that's treated with heparin. And so that was one of the things they learned early. There was actually a big study that was led by a researcher from Winnipeg on the effectiveness of heparin to treat those conditions. So again, also true. Risk of getting COVID, getting hospitalized, and having that complication of COVID infection of blood clots is higher than the side effect that's very rare, although serious, of getting this vaccine-induced thrombotic thrombocytopenia after vaccine. If I could just add one other thing, because what we saw when it was first announced with AstraZeneca was right around the time we were doing our first massive rollouts in First Nation communities. And we saw a lot more people wanting to wait and see what happened with their family members or community members, and if anyone was going to get blood clots, right? And then we saw people start to agree to get the doses kind of later on in that 30-day period. So just to be really clear, around the globe, tens and tens and tens of millions more doses of Pfizer and Moderna have been administered. the same safety monitoring is going on. And this rare but serious side effect is not being reported or observed with either Moderna or Pfizer. They are mRNA vaccines. They're different products. I don't actually know what's going on in the bodies, why after AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson this has been observed, but not with Pfizer and Moderna. But many, many more doses of them have been given without even this very, very rare side effect being observed. So I fully believe if you're over 40 in Manitoba, you're now eligible for AstraZeneca. You can access it. First vaccine is best. If you're kind of concerned about that compared to Moderna or Pfizer, and your age group is kind of getting close to being eligible through the super site, can see why you might want to wait, but would strongly encourage any vaccine for people.
Oh my gosh, my brother was like got the news yesterday and then did his phone calling, and he was like, happy spring to me, I'm going to get vaccinated. So, I feel like there's a few people, those of us who are like, queers over 40 living our best lives. I think that a lot of people I know are starting to book and be able to start accessing some of that. There's been a few questions. Oh, look, there's somebody who's already posting who's like, I was lucky enough to get my AstraZeneca shot today, and I was so thankful. So yeah, I guess if you had a vaccine, maybe just pop in the comments and, let us know how it went for you. There's a couple of questions though, so I think we should address those before we kind of move on. So Jenny was wondering, which I think is a really good question, about what is actually the treatment when one of these vaccine-induced clots occur. So like, are we doomed, Marsha, or is there something that can be done?
Okay, so there are treatments. So for example, they give IVIG, which is a kind of immune globulin, close monitoring, other supportive care. It's not blood thinners like heparin, okay? So they can't be like that type of blood thinner, but there actually are treatments in these rare situations where the vaccine-induced blood clots occur.
And so people are able, I think what I've also appreciated is people are like, here are some signs and symptoms. So if you Google it, you can figure out, so you get your AstraZeneca shot, have in the back of your head a little signs and symptoms moment, and then and then access the care that you need should you need it. And I think that just knowing that it's a serious but very, very rare side effect allows us to take some steps to also do some prevention up front, right?
And also within 14 days.
Yeah.
So it's a time limited window to pay attention for those symptoms. That could be like unilateral leg pain, chest pain, shortness of breath, severe headache, or stroke-like symptoms.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay. And then the next question is, are there folks who shouldn't be getting is there a reason that people shouldn't get the vaccine? So like if there's a history of blood clots, or I think I messaged Marsha to be like, what about folks who have a history of stroke? Like, what's the T?
Yeah, so I specifically looked this up because the mechanisms of blood clots that tend to run in families or that cause strokes are completely different than the mechanism of the blood clots following vaccine. That's actually not a contraindication. And I reviewed guidelines from multiple countries around that. Having a family history of blood clots, not a risk factor for this. Now, we have to keep in mind, we're talking about a very, very small number of people who have had these rare side effects. So we will continue to learn more. But yeah, at this point, no evidence of that. And again, the mechanisms by which those blood clots occur are very different. So would not expect there to be a natural reason for why, if you've had someone in your family who had a blood clot, you would be more likely to get this either.
Awesome. That's helpful. Oh my gosh. I love that you reviewed the guidelines from around the world. You were like, we're just going to go a little step further than Canada by doing a worldwide lit review to answer that tiny question. Anyway, this is why I feel like I'm like, we are in good shape, queers, because freaking the goddamn skill and research abilities of Marsha to guide us through this business. Anyways.
Well, I don't have a wrong answer when one of my friends asks me a question like that. So,
and that's just the thing, as Levi was saying about, risk assessment and navigating opinion and fact. I mean, like, that's why we rely upon folks that are experts in this area to give us good guidance. And so, yeah, we're totally lucky that we have Marcia. But I just want to emphasize, and this is like a small personal story, but why first vaccine is best, and like, let's go out and get it. So my mom had an appointment to be vaccinated. It was supposed to be a couple days ago. And there's a Hindu festival going on. So, you know, last week she was at her temple and, you know, celebrating it within the COVID restrictions. But she's now a close contact of someone who has COVID-19. And so it resulted in, and now she's in, you know, isolation and had to cancel her vaccination appointment. And it has implications for folks that she lives with. And so I just, you know, want to say that, like, the idea of protecting ourselves really does minimize risk for so many other folks. And let's, you know, get it done with all the guidance that Marcia's provided around making sure we're making informed decisions and really emphasizing the importance of informed consent. But yeah, the risk implications are so great when we don't take advantage of having access. Yeah.
And I think just remembering that we are doing this to, like, because we care about our communities, you know. And I always think about the flu vaccine that way. Like, I'm a religious flu vaccine person, because the idea of like putting people that I care about who are immunocompromised at risk feels intense. And so it's always been a thing that I've done with work where if people are forced to come and see me, they should know that I am doing the best that I can to care for their health, you know. And that includes not, you know, getting the flu vaccine. So I'm not giving, you know, somebody who can't tolerate a flu, like making somebody sick. So I think about that a lot with this vaccine and thinking about how do we just always remember like the collective wellness that we're aiming for as well. So in a couple of different ways, like anyone getting a vaccine is helping all of us. And also as we get our vaccine, we are helping everyone. And so thinking about it in that way too, I think is really important so we can at least get a little bit of protection on board for the people we love and for ourselves.
And it's an act of racial justice. And like, let's not forget that, because this vaccine has disproportionately been impacting our communities. And so you want to like demonstrate allyship. let's make sure that we're getting vaccinated and protecting communities across the board.
Oh, we have another question. Sorry, I'm going to pause before I ask that question and be like, yeah, what Karen just said, everyone, and then scooch over to the question. So someone is asking about what the efficacy rate after one dose of Moderna vaccine is. And I think it's saying, will it reduce serious complications if someone got COVID, so I think we're just looking for information about the effectiveness after one vaccine, and will it help with variants, and you know, what do we have to keep doing or not do, or like how does getting one dose change things for folks? Marcia, you're on mute.
Thank you for letting me know that I'm on mute. You know, that's a really excellent question. And I'll share some of the information that we've also shared on our First Nations Facebook Lives about the effectiveness of Moderna after first dose in First Nations communities. So in general, the evidence is showing that one dose is in the range of 70 to 80% protective, starting 2 weeks after that dose is received. Along with our First Nations-led team from FINISM and PRCT, we have seen higher numbers of breakthrough infections in First Nations communities than we would have expected, where we've been using Moderna a lot. And so the effectiveness there is lower after one dose. Fortunately, we do see very few breakthrough infections after 2 doses. And what I think is really important about that is a few things. First of all, 1 dose is good, 2 doses are better. And so we do need people to show up for both doses. And some of the concern that we had when, you know, there was the lengthened interval for the province and NACI recommended it, was that people started to think, well, I heard there's lots of side effects after the second dose. We talked about that before because I had terrible side effects. So if one dose is good enough, I don't want to show up for my second dose and get all those side effects. No, to get to what the studies quote, like the 90+% effectiveness, you really need that second dose. And in First Nations communities, we started to see the breakthrough infections go up after 42 days. So we really want to try to keep that interval as close to the 28 days as possible. The vaccines do also reduce severe outcomes. So even if you do get COVID, less likely to end up in hospital. And Moderna in particular is also effective against the variants that we're starting to see more commonly in Manitoba, mostly the B117 variant. So one dose is not effective enough to change the isolation requirements. For example, if you have an exposure, you're still going to have to isolate and be tested like all other close contacts. Whereas after 2 doses, it's effective enough that 2 weeks later, if you get exposed, you don't have to isolate. You can just self-monitor. So there is a big difference between the first and the second dose in terms of effectiveness.
Levi, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, it's kind of, I think it's related to that, and I really appreciate Marsha's.
Am I freezing?
No. So one of the things that I heard when we were talking about vaccines and one of my daily life things was somebody was like, well, why should I get a vaccine if I can still carry the virus? If I can still carry enough of the viral load that it's, oh, bye, Marsha.
We lost her. She's like, I'm out. Forget it.
No more Levi questions. That is enough.
I'm sure she'll be back. Oh my gosh. In the meantime, I love all of these questions coming up in the comments. Anybody?
I was just sitting here I was like, oh my God, all these people that I haven't seen in so long, it's like warming my heart.
Same
like
nice.
Kelly, I was like, hi Kelly. And like,
Oh.
it's so great that we're still kind of, that our webs are still out there, even though I feel so disconnected.
I know. I love it too. It really makes a huge difference. So like, thanks everyone for your comments and for,
Even just saying hi.
Yeah, I know. I love the highs. I love it so much. Because it's just like, we don't get to do that in the same ways. And like, God damn, I'm missing it a lot. Especially right now, especially as we enter third winter and second apocalypse, I'm like, fucking over it. Oh my gosh. Somebody is, Green is like, this is a social event of my week.
It's true.
Same. I put lipstick on once every 2 weeks, whether I need it or not.
Okay, so now that Marsha's gone, so we can go back to the vanity. Just kidding.
Yeah. Be like, you guys, don't do that without me.
Yeah, right. It's not very fun. So what color would you have worn then? Like a burgundy?
Yeah. Like, I think I should have gone darker.
Yeah.
No, I think red was the right call. I
Really?
really do. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Mustard and red is like such a genius combination.
Oh, well, thank you. That's good. It's good to know. I'm such a like pinky person that I'm
We're
always
back on lipsticks, Marsha.
Hey, Karen, there's desire to see your quilt. Oh my gosh. Okay, tell us about that puppy. Are you working on it or is it just warming you?
No, I am hand quilting it, so I can't really.
Karen's like, I cannot show you until it is perfect.
Oh, it's so nice.
It is so nice. Oh my
I'm
gosh.
like multitasking here because I got to go back to doing work after this. So I was like, this will be like my nice break with my friends, and I'll be quilting, and it'll be wonderful.
Like,
And then I'll go back to the misery of my work. So that's what's happening right now.
What's going to happen to us when we're allowed to be together? Like, are you going to be DJing and quilting at the bar at the same time? Like,
Yeah, I'm going to try and make that
like,
happen.
setting up aquariums at Club 200. Like, what's going to happen? So many things.
Yeah, how do we
Look
like
at the little reptiles
reintegrate?
in my purse.
Totally. Like, how do we reintegrate into like our usual queer lives with our new weird pandemic hobbies?
I know.
No one knows what it's going to look like.
No one's going to.
All of Levi's drag is going to be like not fishy drag, but like literal fish drag.
It's like a giant goldfish head and wing. Oh my God. Okay. All right. Marsha, you really created a sweet opportunity just there. Good job on your spotty internet connection. Okay, back to Moderna, you guys. Come on now. We got to circle back to that moment in time. So I feel like Marcia was in the middle of something.
I totally gave a full explanation before I realized I was frozen, like I was on a real roll. So I have no idea when it cut out.
We
No,
mostly
I thought you were just looking at me in amazement.
Oh no, we were. We heard most of it. Like I think we lost you. We were talking a little bit about how one dose does reduce serious complications, but we still need to be sort of like doing the fundamentals to be able to keep each other safe. And then the question Levi was asking was about or it was a similar question that
what do you say to somebody who's like, why should I get a vaccine if I can still carry enough of a viral load that is transmittable?
Yeah, like I think we're wondering about if I get the vaccine, if I get one shot of the vaccine or two shots of the vaccine, even if someone gets COVID even after being vaccinated, do they make enough virus to spread that on to other people? Are they still helping stop the transmission?
So the first thing I would say is even after one dose, the chances of you getting COVID go down significantly. It's not enough to be full protection and it won't last long enough, which is why everyone needs to get their second dose. But a first dose is helpful. That being said, can't be counted on enough to say you're for sure not going to catch it or pass it on to others. So the reason to get it is to lower the risk. So again, when we talk about the risks benefits, we're certainly lowering the risk of getting COVID and passing it on even after one dose. And then after the second dose, that risk is much, much, much smaller. So it's a bit of an investment to get both doses to get that highest level of protection. But to be clear, there is benefit after one dose as well.
Okay. And so what about, okay, can I and I don't know if you can answer this or speak to this question right now at all, just let me know. But so what is this, do you know what we're doing here in Manitoba with second doses for folks? Because right now it feels like it's sort of like a question mark of how people is there what's the story, man?
So essentially, the provincial goal is to get everybody vaccinated with a first dose and then roll immediately into second doses. So it's not that it's for sure going to be 4 months. It's going to be up to 4 months because our first goal is to get a needle in everyone's arm who wants one before we start doing those second doses.
Okay. Gotcha. That is helpful. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other questions, comments? Do we need to talk a little bit about variants and is there anything new we should be doing, or or we just kind of carry on with what we're already being told? Do we know anything? Is there?
So, I think we probably need to revisit the public health orders because new ones were announced again yesterday. And so we're kind of taking a step backwards, so to speak. So for gatherings at your home, it's back to 2 designated visitors. So if you have really close friends, but there's 4 people in that household, that's not in alignment with the public health orders anymore. It's back down to the 2 designated visitors per household. A little bit different if you live alone. Gathering sizes are changing again. And so, for example, for outdoor gatherings, it's back down to 10, and it's 10 in total. So if I have people over my yard, a week ago, I could have my household plus 10 people in my yard. Now it's 10 in total again. And then occupancy limits also going down. So for example, in retail, down to 33% or 333 people, church occupancy going down, different things like that. And the main focus of these new orders is because cases are on the rise, the variants are on the rise, they do spread more easily between people, but also with the recent cases, they've had a higher average number of contacts per case. So too many gatherings basically going on, and people going to multiple gatherings over spring break and Easter and things like that. And so quite honestly, as hard as these restrictions are,
If we don't want to end up with exponential growth and situations like what has been seen in Ontario, each of us needs to pay really close attention to minimizing our non-household close contacts. It's the best way to halt new case rates is to keep the number of close contacts who can potentially become cases as low as possible. And then the physical distancing, masking, hand hygiene, all kind of need to continue.
Yeah. Anything else, team, that people want to know about? Levi's like, maybe. How about folks on the comments? You're all like, oh God, it's happening. I'm very interested in who everyone's close contacts are. I'll tell you that much for free.
I was just
like
going
I
to
missed
say,
out on the opportunity for fun.
there's another question coming in, but I was just going to mention that I think there's going to be another announcement about the vaccination strategy tomorrow, from what I recall, Marcia. So we should probably all keep our eyes peeled on the news tomorrow, or just listen for perhaps a different strategy for rolling out vaccination, is the sense I got. And there might be some questions answered about essential workers and who has access on that front. That's the sense I got from prior news conferences. Marcia, you probably have a better sense than I do.
There are times when I have to be cautious about making announcements prematurely. Yeah, I would say stay tuned tomorrow. Might not be as much detail as people are hoping for, but what has been referred to in the past is the province moving towards what they've called a hotspot approach, similar to Ontario. So instead of just keeping on dropping the ages, to look at different neighborhood level risk factors, including rates of high transmission, and trying to increase access and eligibility in those areas. So there will be further announcements about that in the coming days.
And I mean, they've been talking about that for a little bit now too. And I feel hopeful about that as well. Because I just every time I think about all the people who have to work, who don't have sick time, who can't, where it's actually risky to go and get tested because you can't afford to survive without working. I just think all of that, it's time to start thinking about how we can help take care. If we're not prepared to do the right thing around sick time, then we damn well better be getting people's vaccines into them as soon as we can. So,
did you see that in BC that they moved to the essential worker strategy? So people and adults of any age who are essential workers can get a vaccine. But in BC, they allowed sex workers to claim to be under the essential worker thing, and I thought that was really cool. And I think it's always important to highlight positive things that are coming out of COVID stuff. Like our New York Times best-selling friend Tasha Spillett posted today that she's been one of the things she's been so impressed with, and that I totally agree with, is the ability of First Nations people who are sharing their vaccines with their neighbors, not only in the territory that we call Canada, but it's happening in the States as well. We're seeing that so much. So I think that's really important to highlight, especially considering the Premier's remarks early when the vaccination strategies were happening, and then just to kind of reflect on those two things, I think it's really cool.
Sorry, I also think I love that too. And sex worker, I mean, how much have we talked about close contacts, COVID, and sex? We spend a lot of time hashing that out. And we haven't gone into production on romance glass, so we need to get vaccines to sex workers as soon as we possibly can. And that's the truth. Okay, there's a few questions, couple. Oh my gosh, Chantal is just gonna bring on the giant question here. Let's see where we're at. So okay, there it is. So how does the announcement in local vaccinations lead to the global fight against COVID when vaccinations are hoarded by colonial and white dominant countries, imperialist countries? And and like are eliminated or not available in the global south, and what can we do at a local level aside from just getting a vaccine in our arms to really think through some of that global context. Does anyone want to hop onto that one?
Maybe I'll make a local comment first, and then would certainly defer some of the more global questions to Karen or Levi, who I think have more experience there. The one thing that I'll say about this, though, is I think it's really important that folks understand that within our borders, we have people who live in contexts we don't imagine as part of rich countries and have the resultant health conditions. And the rates of COVID-19 in African and Black communities within Canada, within the United States, of First Nations communities on and off reserve are certainly not what we would expect if all things were equal in a wealthy country. And so there's the work always that we need to do around health justice across countries, as the question asks, but also within countries too.
Yeah, and there is no doubt that the global distribution of vaccine, of PPE supplies, of just health resources generally is completely inequitable, and it's inequitable along lines that trace to colonialism, that reflect white supremacy, just as you've pointed out. And so, you know, the question of how do we locally impact globally or internationally is always a difficult one. I mean, there's the obvious of put pressure on your elected officials to say that when it comes to things like our compliance with international standards and schemes that regulate the distribution of medication and medical supplies, that like we're doing our part and not engaging in hoarding behavior, that we're like as much as possible supporting open access around some of these kinds of schemes because they're also contributing in significant ways to just the kind of like hegemony of certain sort of capitalist approaches to access to health. But yeah, I think it's just a really challenging question. And you're right, part of it is starting local and making sure that we do contribute to local justice initiatives. And just as I said, I think getting vaccinated and fighting for equitable healthcare access within our local communities is an act of racial justice because of what we're seeing COVID-19 do. But I think for sure we have to hold ourselves accountable for the ways that, vaccine access is a really good indicator of just how inequitable access to supply is. Like on the one hand, we want to, test out medications in certain places in the world, but then we don't want to give people access to those medications once they're developed. And I think that says everything about the inequities of our like international systems. So don't know that I offered much there, but just want to underscore your point.
I don't know what we can again, there's always these questions about like how much pressure can we put on our elected officials. I was reading, I think it was in the Guardian today, and they said like 1/5 of the world's population has something like has first call on 6.2 billion doses of vaccinations, where the remaining 4/5 of the world population has access to 2 billion. And so one of the strategies that many countries have done is they've put pressure on the United Nations to lift patents on the vaccines. And again, at a local level, as a little person here in Winnipeg, I don't know, I can call my MP to ask them to put pressure on on Canada to sign off on that motion put forward in the United Nations. But I don't know, sometimes it just feels so fruitless. But I mean, just but knowing that there is lots of movement happening, and that we should figure out ways that we can support these types of things when called upon, and figure out the best ways that we can kind of force people's hands into signing on to these things. Because like Pfizer and Moderna are going to be actually okay. They've made bank.
Yeah, they're good now.
Johnson and Johnson don't actually need patent protection. Like none of these corporations are actually going to be burdened by the fact that they won't be able to sell another $6.2 billion or 6.2 billion doses of vaccinations. So.
Well, and we have to be brand loyal. So if we got one, we have to show up for the second one. So like, it's time. It's time to let those patents. The fact that people. The fact that we're like people are making money and not just like breaking even on like what should be like a universal thing is just, oh my gosh, Chantal, we can have a whole freaking COVID convos just on your question. But I see now that I'm glancing over that there are like there's a whole bunch. So I think we don't have a ton of time. So I'm going to just let's see if we can get through some of the ones that require a little bit of clinical info. Jude. So this is a great question. So, okay, we're talking about how variants are easier to spread. Like, what does that actually mean? Like, how are they tougher, more badass? Like, what's going on that's making them more likely to get into our bodies?
Mm-hmm. So, it's this question of getting to your body more efficiently, but then also taking root and causing illness more. So like replicating, copying themselves in the body more, right? And so it requires less time of exposure, is one of the key things. So still spread by droplets in the air, but it requires less time to exposure. And one of the ways that we see this change in our public health guidelines is we had kind of said for a long time, 15 minutes or more within 2 meters. And then more recently, as the variant started to spread, that changed again. So now we're back down to 10 minutes of total time in a 24-hour period within 2 meters as being of risk of catching a variant. So it takes less time or total exposure is one of the ways that we see this. So yeah, still spread by air, by those respiratory droplets. It spreads more efficiently. So the other thing I would say is, let's say 2 people are really close together without masks, even for less than 10 minutes, even for as little as 1 minute, we would consider that a potential risk for spreading a variant.
All right. And so, Marcia, what is should we just quickly review what we want to see in somebody wearing a mask before we scooch down? No, we don't have to do that. We don't have time for that. I take it back. Okay. All right. This is from my friend Kareen. If you happen to be unlucky enough to get COVID 3 days before you qualify for vaccine, how long after you recover should you wait to get vaccinated? Asking for a friend.
So sorry about that. No, to anyone in that situation, it's really tough, right? So it is going to in part depend on where you are. So for example, in First Nations communities, we are not going to have the same continuous access to the vaccine supply as through a super site. So we might go ahead and vaccinate someone if they were infected 2 weeks ago and they're no longer symptomatic, because we don't know when our next chance to vaccinate them might be, because that's different. We have vaccines intermittently, not continuously at the super sites. We have them available continuously. So if you're going to get vaccinated through one of the provincial super sites or through a pharmacy or a physician's office, for example, it could be as long as 3 months before you go in and get vaccinated. And that has to do with how long the current evidence is showing that you will be immune for. So one of the screening questions will be, have you tested positive for COVID? If so, when? And I'll have to double check, and we can post this later, what the official recommendation is. The last I heard, it was going to be about 3 months after.
And then what about for what about close contacts that are not positive, that are like have tested negative, but like can they get their vaccines while they're isolating, or is that, or like what do you like, what's the story on that? Or do, I guess if they're isolating they can't leave the house, so they must stay home. Is that the, or should they be getting vaccinated?
No,
Stay
just
home.
reschedule your appointment until you're when you're done your isolation period.
Yeah, okay. Alrighty, I think that there was another question. Oh yeah, somebody was like, not a question, just interest in the clinics that are about to be open soon for urban Indigenous folks and underhoused folks. And so, I mean, we could probably talk about that for quite some time as well, but it's 8 o'clock. So I'm just wondering if we kind of hang on to that, because they're about, like, are they, I feel like they're about to open, but not quite yet. Is that a true story? So I feel like Levi and Marcia would know the answer to that one.
I don't know anything about it.
Yeah. So they have been announced. They're not expected to open till the last week of April.
Yeah.
So stay tuned with that for the specific information about how to book appointments at the urban Indigenous clinics. And I think the first appointments will be scheduled for the last week in April, which is coming quick.
It is. It's like next week, basically, everyone. So, yeah, and let's talk about it the next COVID Convo too, because I feel like at that point we'll have a little bit more experience with folks having gone through the system and how it kind of went down for them, et cetera. And then there's also the testing site open at Mumaway too, which I wonder if we should just quickly talk about before we completely sign off for today. And Marcia, I don't know if that, like, I saw a little video of Marcia and the team walking around Mumaway showing off their like cute freaking technology and rapid testing machines and stuff. So maybe we should find that too.
Yeah, that was a ton of work, but was very happy to finally open. So Mama Way at 445 King Street is open for testing Monday to Friday. You can check the website for hours. You can have tests by appointment or by walk-in. And the two really exciting things about it is, first of all, the community support workers that are there who can assess and offer supports that range from like infant feeding supports, if you need formula, home isolation supports, like if you need sanitizer, for example, food security supports, cultural supports. And then also they do have the Abbott ID nows for rapid testing. So if you agree to the rapid test, because it does take 2 swabs instead of just 1, because we need that backup swab to go to the Chatham Provincial Lab, you can have your results in as little as 15 minutes before you leave there. On-site contact tracing possible as well for people who test positive. So it's a really great option in an accessible and supportive environment. I had to take my daughter and my nephew there last week for tests. They had a good experience. They offered us the medicine bundles. And also they offered us little lunch sacks, so bags with a sandwich and juice and a granola bar in them. So Mila was super, super into it.
Like, that is the way to provide healthcare, everybody. Like, this is the beautiful thing of like, because we can, and why can't we do this? Like, it's like you lead with spirit, and also you provide people with the nourishment and care that they need in an apocalypse. Like, you heard us all at the beginning of this COVID convo thinking and talking about how hard it was and how like every little email feels like a personal attack. And you know what feels like a delicious moment of caring is somebody handing you a freaking brown bag with a damn sandwich in it. So I think we need to like remember the like counterbalance to like the violence of emails and remember what the other side of it is as well, and think about, and I mean that is like that is Indigenous led healthcare models that are beautiful. So I'm like really excited for that site and for all the work that your team put into it. It's like it's gorge. And that little video was really cute. I definitely enjoyed it. All right, you guys, we completely went over today. It's now 8:05. So I think we should wrap it up. Does anyone have any like final last words? I'm at the end of my television. I don't even watch TV anymore, you guys.
I think since we talked about vaccines, I think it's really important that anyone who could be impacted by erectile dysfunction get vaccinated, because if you get COVID, your chances for getting erectile dysfunction later on increased significantly. So I think that that's a good. That's also
Super
a
motivator.
good selling point.
Something
for
else will motivate you. You want your penis to work.
So maybe we'll get Feather to make some promotional materials, and we'll just kind of
I think that's perfect. We need stickers.
stickers,
Convo advice stickers.
COVID Convo advice sweaters. Like here, take notes.
I can't believe it took us a year to get to merch. What's wrong with us?
Well, I mean,
That's what a pandemic has done to us, everyone. We don't have a t-shirt available yet.
No, we don't even, because, I spent a lot of time looking into the cost of plexiglass for love glass or romance glass, and it was too much.
I don't know
how much time Rowan and Rudy have to be building us romance glasses. Like,
don't you think it's like lumber though, Levi? I feel like we checked the price on plexi back when everyone was getting plexi. Like, I feel like now we might be able to like really get some bargain.
No, there are still supply shortages.
It's like no romance glass for you. God damn. Oh well. Okay, everybody, that's plenty for one night.